California is moving ahead with its long-planned high-speed rail project that one day may connect San Francisco to Los Angeles. That's not going to happen anytime soon, but the project has received enough funding to start work and complete the Central Valley portion that runs through the agricultural heartland of the Golden State. In 2008, California voters approved a $10 billion bond measure to provide the initial funding to build the first high-speed rail system in the United States. At that time, the project was estimated to cost about $40 billion. That cost has ballooned dramatically. To complete the entire section between San Francisco down to LA, with stops in San Jose and other major cities in California, the expectation is it's going to run about $105 billion, and that cost could still increase. Currently, the program does have funding to complete 171 miles, a portion through the Central Valley of California. It's not heavily populated, and it's one of the easier sections to build through, and even that has been a very difficult challenge to get going. Already, about 119 miles are under construction, running through cities including Fresno, Bakersfield, and eventually connecting up to Merced in the north. However, to really make the system meaningful, it's going to have those connections into the San Francisco Bay Area and down into Los Angeles in Southern California. So far, the state of California has provided more than $9 billion for the project. Additionally, the federal Bipartisan Infrastructure Law does provide some additional funding for the program, so between $2 and $3 billion are likely to flow into the project to help get that Central Valley portion completed. In total, the expectation is building just that first 171 miles will run between $23 and $25 billion. Many of those costs also include securing some of the last remaining sections of land needed in the Central Valley. However, an additional $80 billion is likely to be needed to do the much more difficult work of getting to San Francisco and Los Angeles, because the system's going to have to bore through major mountain ranges, including the Tehachapi and San Gabriel Range in Southern California. And it will also have to contend with earthquake fault lines that ring the state of California, including the San Andreas Fault. These are not insurmountable engineering challenges. They've been conquered in places like Japan, which is equally mountainous and also highly prone to earthquakes. But it does add a lot of cost. So it's very unclear at this point exactly where all of that additional money is going to come from and what the timeline is to complete the entire system. The United States is a bit of a laggard when it comes to high-speed rail. America does have passenger rail in the form of Amtrak and some commuter lines, but compared to Japan, China, most of Europe, and a lot of other parts of the world, high-speed rail is really not a factor here just yet. We are a car-based country. In part, that's because the United States is so very large. So cars and airplanes tend to be a bit more practical in most cases. But there is a movement that is building to add a lot more high-speed rail in the United States. These are incredibly expensive projects to do. Money is not readily available, and they also take a very, very long time to plan out and do the actual construction work. Proponents of the California system see an opportunity to connect all of the California cities, including those in the Central Valley that were bypassed by the state's Interstate 5 freeway, the main connector between Southern California and the Bay Area. Travel time between Los Angeles to San Francisco when the system's completed could be under 3 hours, compared with 5 to 7 to 8 hours by car currently. Ridership figures are estimated to be about 50 million passengers annually by 2040, which could generate more than $3 billion of fare revenue. Currently, funding for the system to build it is coming from California's Cap and Trade program, which is generating about $1 billion that flows into the California High-Speed Rail Project's annual budget. How long those funds will be available isn't entirely clear. The project does have funding for the time being, But the big question is whether it can ultimately find all of that additional money that it's going to need to achieve those big ridership numbers that are anticipated. One of the benefits that proponents also see is it will really connect the state of California in a way that it's not connected today. One could live in Fresno or Bakersfield and commute to work in Los Angeles or up into Silicon Valley. Housing prices are astronomical in Southern and Northern California, much more reasonable in the Central Valley. So it's a way in which it might make it easier for people to live in California a bit more affordably. What we're seeing right now is a little bit of optimism for the system. There's been a lot of pessimism over the last few years because of cost overruns and the reality of how long this project is going to take to complete. The fact that it's now able to move forward with this first section does provide some optimism that this might actually happen. There's been a lot of doubt that it would. However, best case scenario, the system won't be fully operational until the late 2030s. That first section in the Central Valley should begin operating by about 2030, approximately 8 years from now. However, that's a lightly populated section of California. Ridership numbers aren't expected to be terribly high in those early years. Not until it connects into San Jose, San Francisco, and Los Angeles in the south will California begin to see really meaningful ridership numbers. But again, everything hinges on finding tens of billions of dollars that currently do not exist in its budget.